Hi everyone, this is Isabelle.
All right, hello, I'm Lillian. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Okay.
So we're so excited to be presenting today. The conference has been going so well, and we really love hearing everyone's perspectives and everyone's different experiences with social media and with technology in general. So we wanted to give you a little overview about our experiences with technology, especially at Marymount, and especially with social media and how that's been important to our educations and redefined and reshaped our learning. So thank you to our sponsors and everyone who's been helping us out so much throughout the entire conference. We've really been working on this for a while, and we're really excited that everything's coming together today.
Sorry. All right, so this is a little thing that we're going to do where we're going to have everyone map out where they're from. And so do we have it set that people can use it? Sorry, the slides keep switching.
So Lillian and I are both presenting from New York, but it's great to see where everyone's from around the country and around the world even. You can also type into the chat and say where you're from as well, which would be a lot of fun to be able to see where everyone's coming from.
Yep. Seems like we've got a few other New York, we've got Italy. Looks like we've got a good mix of people. All right, so thanks to everyone for inputting where they're from. So this is our presentation, and it's Say with Social Media, and it's all about social media use in schools from a student's perspective.
Okay, so Lillian and I both go to Marymount School, which is an all-girls independent school in New York. And our curriculum has been recognized as an Apple Distinguished Program for the past 4 years. Students in kindergarten through 5th grade use iPads in school, and then from 6th through 12th grade, everybody gets a MacBook Air to use in school and at home. And then once you're in 12th grade, science students get iPads to take home too so that they can access material. And our curriculum is largely based around the technology that students have access to, which has just reshaped our learning completely. The MacBook Airs were something new since Lillian and I were in, I believe, sophomore year, and it's completely changed the way that we've done things, both in class, in terms of note-taking, and also just in clubs in general, because all students have access to these tools. And Lillian and I are also leaders of the Student Technology Leadership Team at Marymount, which is a program that's very unique to Marymount. We were one of the first to develop a student-led technology team, which basically works in partnership with the faculty team at our school to test products, to give presentations, to organize school-wide technology events, and this year mostly to create the technology conference that we're speaking at today. All
right, so here we have a few quotes from other students in our schools. So Lauren first says, I use social media to communicate with my peers about missed assignments and to get feedback on any questions I have, and this is a really good example of how students really collaborate to make sure that nobody's missing any material, because if you're out sick for a day, then you can just use Facebook and message a friend and ask them to send you any notes that you missed or a picture of the worksheet that a teacher handed out in class. And so it's a really great way for us to all connect and, ask quick questions about homework. And then Nitia says how she uses social media to make announcements about upcoming school activities and to spread school spirit. And through that, we use tools such as Instagram and Twitter and Facebook to talk all about different events that are coming up, whether it is, a dance that's coming up or something like this conference where so many students from our schools, particularly the students on the Student Technology Leadership Team, we were posting all over social media getting interest in this conference to find more attendees and to just make sure everybody knew about it and how much work we had put into it. And then Morella says, whenever we form a committee, my first question is, should we create a Facebook group? And I think this is specifically referencing her participation in Model UN, which is one of the school clubs. And with that, the Facebook groups, they're a really great private way for students to connect and share information related to the topic that that group is focusing on, and you can post links and you can generate conversations, and so it's just a really convenient way for everyone to connect with each other. So these are just some examples of how girls all throughout our school are using social media.
Great. So one of the main things that we want to highlight in this presentation is the difference between the misconceptions about social media and the reality. So I know a huge topic of discussion when social media or just technology in general comes up is how much time is our students wasting on social media. And we want to redefine this notion and challenge it by saying that time spent on social media and on just with the use of technology in general can be incredibly productive. Present-day society's view of technology in general is often defined as one of two extremes, either this way of the future, important integral part of where we are going with society and culture and education and learning, or more often than not, what I was discussing before, dismissed as a distraction. And so Lillian and I wanted to address a couple of the common misconceptions about social media and the way that we address them. So the first one is, quote, Facebook is dying. And the misconception is that nobody uses Facebook anymore. But the way that we're challenging this and redefining it is that we don't only use Facebook, but we also use other apps like Twitter, Snapchat, or Vine. We have slides later on talking about how we do use Facebook, but it's only one of many. It's not the sole form of social media or communication that we use anymore. And then the second misconception that we wanted to address is the selfie generation, which basically is that the media is talking about the narcissistic teen culture that's being breeded from Instagram or from Snapchat. But we want to challenge this because we don't use Instagram to post selfies. We use Instagram to share information. We share science experiments. We share news about sports games or school plays or musicals. There was a coffee house at Marymount a few weeks ago, and we were able to post videos and pictures of what people were doing to share the news and just in order to connect with our friends. And then the third of these misconceptions is that Twitter is only used to follow celebrities. But this is not true because Twitter, in our classes especially, is a way for us to explore our interests and to start new conversations. I have a Twitter account for an entrepreneurship class that I'm taking this year where I follow entrepreneurs. I guess they're celebrities if they're famous entrepreneurs, but I get new inspiration for projects that I know others have started, or I'm able to follow up with current events or with the projects of fellow students in my class as well. So these 3 misconceptions versus reality statements that Lillian and I have come up with are really trying to get at the fact that social media is not a distraction or a waste of time, but completely, on the other hand, is the way of the future and is the way to redefine education for our generation.
So now we're going to talk about how social media is part of our reality and our everyday life within education. So the first 2 websites that we're going to talk about are Facebook and Tumblr. And so through these we can do things such as create class groups and chats and easily publicize different events. And it reaches both a private space and a public space, because we have, for example, we have a class group, which you can see a little screenshot of on the side. And this is a private Facebook group that we have for all of the girls in Isabelle and my grade. And in this, you know, if somebody has a question that they want to direct at the whole class in regards to an assignment that was given, or in reference to something that's going on at school, or there's something that they think is really funny and want to share with the whole grade, they just post the link there, and then you know, we talk about it in the comments, and it's a really great way to get quick discussions going at any time with everyone in our grade, since virtually everyone in our grade has a Facebook. And through Facebook, we also use this not only for classes, but for clubs. And for example, my AP French class, there's only 4 of us, and so we just have a group chat with messaging where if we have a question about the homework or anything like that, we will just send it to the messaging, and then any of the other 3 girls will message it back, and we can talk really quickly about it. And then, as I was mentioning, we use it a lot to publicize events such as something like this, or if there's a really big rivalry game coming up with another school, we'll post all over Facebook, getting people interested and getting people excited about coming, and just making sure they all know, and it's a really easy way for them to find out about it, especially because if we post about it on our public Facebook, then it reaches a wider audience, and we can get broad interest in those events. And these are all completely student generated and student monitored, and so there's no interaction with administration in school, and so it's something that we've taken our own initiative to do and to make happen.
Okay, so I mentioned Twitter briefly earlier, but one of the biggest, I guess, forms of social media that I've been introduced to since coming to Marymount is Twitter. It's something that I was not exposed to on my own at all, and it's completely driven by the other students in my classes. So in the entrepreneurship class, for example, every student in the class has a Twitter account, and we have a group hashtag so that all of our articles and all of our posts can be streamed into one location where everyone can access the same information. We can follow our teachers or our fellow students who post new information every day. And we also have class hashtags, so depending on which class you're taking, a lot of science classes, and also my French class, use hashtags in order to streamline similarly information, articles, or just relevant topics for study or for more in-depth information about the topics that we're currently learning about in class. And so I think that Twitter creates an active communication between a teacher and student, but in a more different way, or in a different way than we've been accustomed to in the past. We can share videos with each other and articles and photos, and we're directly connecting, but with the social media platform between us. So it just sort of creates a more dynamic relationship between student and teacher. Especially recently we did an experiment in biology, and we tweeted out pictures of the work that we were doing. And we also hashtagged MaryMat, and so the school was then able to see the work that we were doing. And so it's just a way to connect information and individuals in a way that I haven't been introduced to before. So beyond that, I think that Twitter is just something that's very interesting in order to just show snippets of what you're doing and to build a new network of individuals that you're working with.
And so the another kind of social media that we use are more focused on media, as it says here, such as Instagram and Vine and Snapchat. And so one way that we use Instagram a lot is that my AP Physics class has an Instagram that we use where we will post pictures of our labs that we do. And so then all of our lab setups are in one easily accessible place. And so Mr. Walters can go, Mr. Walters, he's our teacher, he can go and look at our lab setups and check to make sure that the setups are correct and that we have everything set. And it's a really easy way to consolidate all the pictures. And a lot of the time we will use Instagram and Vine and Snapchat to share pictures and videos of the projects or the labs that we're doing. And so, for example, sophomore year in chemistry class, we were doing a titration lab, and it was really cool because as it went on, the substance went from being clear to being bright pink. And so that was very exciting. And so then you saw everyone posting pictures of their beakers with the different shades of pink that they all were. And so every year when the students are doing that lab or the one where they change the colors of pennies, there are tons of pictures of it on Instagram, and people will post videos of it on Vine or in their Snapchat stories. And so it's a great way to see what everybody's doing. And it's really helpful because then if you post a video of that, then when you're doing the lab, you don't have to do it solely from memory. You can go back and look at it and rewatch the video so you can remember exactly what happened. And that's also helpful for students who miss the lab, because if there's no chance for them to make it up, then they can just watch the video and look at what another student did and help that so that they know what's going on as they're doing their lab. And we don't just use that for labs, we use it for all different types of projects throughout school and anything that we find interesting. And so it's just a really convenient way to add a visual aspect to the information that we are sharing.
So we wanted to give a couple of tips that we've come up with as students to give to other students in order to use social media as a learning tool and not as a distraction. So the first of those is to create a Twitter hashtag for your class so that you can have new dialogues on Twitter and be able to streamline your conversations and your information. Another thing is the Skype or FaceTime office hours, which are not as frequent in Marymount, but I've used a lot outside of school. Some teachers at Marymount will set up office hours over Skype where you can ask questions on the night before a test or even create a video with information or video notes that they send over to their students. But outside of school, I've definitely used Skype a lot in my educational experience, I guess. And it was something that I wasn't immediately drawn to. I really liked learning in person a lot better. But I was working with a tutor for SAT prep who lived in Brooklyn, so it was a little bit difficult to be able to connect all the time in person. So she suggested starting to do Skype tutoring sessions. And I said, okay, I'll try it. It's definitely going to be like more difficult than if we were just sitting face to face, so I could ask you questions. But I ended up loving it. It was so much easier because there was no problem of setting up or trying to get started. We would get started right away. It was as if she were really sitting right next to me, because when we were working side by side, we were each working on our respective computers anyway, so it was the equivalent of having a session in my house, but just over Skype. So that's something similar that could be done, whether just in terms of chatting over Skype or in terms of an actual video chat session between teachers and students, or between tutors and students in this case. Then the other suggestion was to create a Tumblr account for notes and assignments. So after class, our notes are all saved digitally and then posted on different websites or Tumblr accounts in order for students who were absent that day to be able to access them, or if you missed something in your notes and want to look back. So I think that was just something that we suggested because it's a way that you can archive all of this information and make it so much more accessible. And I think that one of the things we wanted to highlight throughout this entire presentation was just the accessibility that work with social media and work with technology brings to students. Twitter gives you access to so much new information. The connections that you're making with your classmates on Facebook or through Facebook groups just allow you to connect and to come together in such an easy way. And I think that's something that's really been, that we really wanted to emphasize in this presentation. So then another suggestion of ours was to create this science Instagram or science Vine for experiments that Lillian was talking about. Just first of all, as a way to check on your experiments, make sure they were going the right way or everything's set up. But beyond that, just also to share pictures of cool things that you did in lab, like the fuchsia pink experiment that Lillian was talking about, or creating elastic, I know they did in the chem class. So there are all sorts of different things that you do in science class that are so cool to share with your friends, whether they're in your class or not. I feel like everyone is just very interested in sharing what they're doing. And so then the last of our suggestion is just in general to encourage students to use social media to further their academic experience and to use it for research purposes or for just academic purposes in general, instead of using it to check what the latest trends are, I guess you can say. So using social media and technology as a means of productivity.
Yeah, and just quickly on that same note, I know that a lot of the time my mom will come back into the back room when I'm trying to do homework, like into the little area that I work, and she'll see me on Facebook and, you know, say, oh, are you on Facebook? You know, you're supposed to be doing homework. And then I always tell her, well, I am doing homework. And so she had it in her mind that it was only a distraction, but now by showing her everything that I've been doing with my classmates over social media, even she's realized that there's so much more to it than just a distraction, and that it really is a tool for everyone to use, and that can really, really be used to the fullest potential. And I feel like everybody kind of doubts that in a way. Now we also compiled a list of advice for administrators in schools that are a little bit nervous about the use of social media, just because it often is thought of as a distraction and you know, not good for people, and just it's often looked down upon that, especially in reference to schoolwork, that one good thing to do is to create an acceptable use policy that includes information about acceptable use of social media. And at our school, at the beginning of every year, we sign an acceptable use policy, and that says how we agree that we won't really be on social media or anything like that in school as a distraction, and we'll purely be using it for school-related purposes, because once it's not banned and it's more encouraged, then it doesn't seem like students won't have to like sneak around and feel rebellious as they're using it because they're, you know, not normally allowed to. That now there really is an educational purpose for it, and it can be better incorporated into the classroom and more positively incorporated into the classroom. And then another one is to work together to create a way that mobile devices can be useful in a classroom instead of just harmful. That you know, students can use their mobile devices. For example, at school, we are allowed to have our cell phones on us, and we're allowed to use them in the classroom if it's related to an educational purpose. So, for example, oftentimes in my French class, if we're doing a recording, we'll all take out our iPhones and use a specific app called Audio Boo. And whether it's practicing an oral part for the AP test or recording our thoughts on the chapter that we just read in a certain book, then we'll all do our recordings and use Audio Boot, and it's connected to our class Twitters, and so we'll tweet our recording, and then we can all listen to each other's, and our teacher can access them. And so it's a really positive way of using our mobile devices, and they're not so contraband anymore. And so it makes it seem like they can definitely be a learning tool positively instead of just a negative surrounding the whole aspect. And then, as I mentioned, with my mom doubting the fact that I'm using Facebook for class, another way is to work with parents to identify different issues with social media and show them that it is a positive thing, because I think oftentimes social media gets associated with distraction and sometimes with cyberbullying, and how it isn't always positive if people don't use it in the right way. And if you work with parents, then they can see how there is a positive aspect to it, and it doesn't just have to be negative. And then if they know that it's a positive, they can encourage their children to then use that social media in a good way, and they can work together to make sure that it's being used in a good way. And parents don't have to be so afraid of it and just write it off, that they can be involved and see how in a new age it's actually very helpful for our education. And then finally work with faculty at the school to use social media in the classroom and show them how it can be a positive tool. And so I know teachers at Marymount are always trying to find new ways to make connecting easier and to make sharing work easier. Our new site for all of our syllabi, it has a messaging feature that's almost like Facebook messaging, where a teacher can send a message to the entire class talking about an assignment or giving them a notification about something such as a due date, and encouraging them to use Tumblr for their syllabi if that's another one of the options, and just showing them how they can encourage it to make sure that it's being used in a positive way and that they are encouraging their students.
So thank you so much. I think that Lillian summed that up perfectly in the end, and we just wanted to see if there were any questions that we could answer for you at the end of this session.
I know I saw one question earlier, and it was someone asking about how teachers at their school say they have a hard time getting students to follow them on Twitter because they fear teachers seeing their personal posts and everything and not truly being able to post all that stuff. And I think a good way to deal with that is by having separate personal and school-related accounts for everything, where my account that I use in to tweet stuff for French class and for different things that I tweet for physics class on occasion, it's completely different from my personal one. And so it's a way to have all of that condensed in one space and keeping it separate from my personal area. And it kind of keeps it separate not only for privacy reasons, but also just so that when my mind is on school, I can just enter that social media account and use it purely for that. And then with Facebook, that one, students and teachers are not friends on Facebook, and that's entirely student-run, and so there's no fear of teachers seeing anything that they post there. And so if teachers and students are concerned about seeing that, then I think it's a good idea just to keep all of that separate. I don't know if you have anything to say to that, Isabelle.
Another question that I saw was about an all-girls school versus a co-ed school, and the fact that we're in an all-girls school and taking on the task of technology as girls when it's typically, or I guess when often it's seen as a boys' task. And I love this question because I think that I just, can you not hear me, Lillian?
I can hear you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. Isabelle?
Hi, can you hear me? Can you hear me? You can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Sorry. I have my sister nodding on the other side. Yeah. So the one thing I wanted to say about the girls versus boys in technology was perfect. Just was the fact that at Marymount, since we are all girls, it is our job. But I think that even I came from a co-ed school, and even in a co-ed environment, it would be something that I would be drawn to, just because I think that what we're doing more than anything is creating new ideas and giving people the opportunity to express their ideas. And I know that from a lot of the presentations that have been done in this conference, there's so much ideation and exploration with learning that's done through technology. And just, I'm completely all for the power of technology to allow you to do anything that you ever thought could be possible. Whether that's on a 3D printer, an Arduino, on social media, or presenting with others, or even just connecting with others in any way. I think that the power of technology more than anything is a power to educate people and to allow them to explore their curiosity and to further that curiosity.
And so much of technology is so new these days that it really is a collaborative effort to learn everything about it and to figure it out and to get it all working, that at a certain point it shouldn't be about you know, boys in it versus girls in it. It should be a collective, collaborative effort, and it shouldn't matter whether you're a boy or a girl. If you're interested, then you should be able to explore it and learn more about it. And so I saw another question. Sorry, I'm trying to find it. So it was asking about how if there are teachers at Marymount who aren't into this sort of social media thing. And there certainly are teachers who have more of a proclivity per se for using social media than other teachers. And you know, I think that's just going to be wherever you go, you're going to find people who are more apt to use social media than others. And at this point, you know, it's not a requirement to use it at all, but it is definitely something that we're incorporating. And so there are some teachers that I have that really don't use it at all in our classes, but that's not a problem. We just, you know, there's still no shortage of technology, even if it's not that certain aspect. And so there definitely are teachers like that, and at this point it's just generating interest and making sure everybody knows that it is a viable option, even if they're not going to make their entire classes revolve around it just yet. Great. Did you see any other questions, Isabelle? I think I maybe saw some. Oh, okay. So there's one that says, what's one thing that your school doesn't have that you feel they need? I don't know if you maybe want to pick that one up, Isabelle.
That's a good question.
That's a really good question.
It's funny because just since this is a little bit of a deviation from the question, but I'll come back to it at the end. But since I've been at Marymount, it's been great to see how much technology has changed. When I came in 9th grade, and I'm a senior now, so when I was visiting for the first time as an 8th grade prospective student, there were kids building the first 3D printers by hand. They had a kit sent to them from MakerBot of wooden panels that you screw together to make a 3D printer. And that was the coolest thing in the world at that point. But I think even since then, as technology has changed, we now have completely revolutionized our 3D printers in our Fab Lab. We have, I believe, it's either 6 or 8 printers at this point that have not been assembled by hand, that take different types of plastic. 14, Mr. Aldridge is saying 3D printers, which is great. And it's just incredible to see all the work that students are doing on the printers in the Fab Lab all the time, between disciplines especially, because I know that there's an engineering class that's currently making a life-size human robot. But even in my biology class the other day, we just went and used the 3D printer to create our own centrifuge as part of a lab. And I know that there are kids in my entrepreneurship class making prototypes of their designs, or kids who just even go to the Fab Lab to create things for fun. Somebody made armor, somebody made a castle. There's all sorts of different things that you can do. And the fact that Marymount gives us so many resources to do that is so incredible for me. So I think that in terms of the things that the school needs that it doesn't have, at this point I can't really think of anything that's popping up, which is so incredibly surprising in a great way, because it just means that anything I can imagine wanting to do, I have the resources to do at Marymount.
Yeah, I definitely think that at this point there's really nothing else that Marymount needs, because we are at the forefront of technology education, and so I definitely think that should that ever come up, there would be no problem with us making the effort to go and ensure that it gets incorporated. And I see another question. It's how do we feel that all this technology will help us going into college and later down in our careers? And I know specifically with me, I'm looking into engineering in college, and so I definitely think that being so accustomed to using technology will definitely help me, because as I go into engineering, I can find different ways to use technology in projects or anything that I'm doing in college, and to already have experience with this kind of technology will really be amazing. And I think just having the experience and having the kind of training to really be innovative and pioneers with technology, that it will definitely help us take initiative at our future colleges, wherever we end up, to continue using technology throughout our lives and find new ways to do this.
So I have a similar answer to that question, and then a response to a question that just came up about what spurred the idea for this conference. But on the forefront, just the question about college in general, something that is funny on the topic of 3D printers is that while I was visiting a college, the tour guide announced to the group how excited they were because they just got their first 3D printer, and I turned to my dad and I said, "We have 11." So I think that the work we're doing is definitely something that we can continue in college, and that other colleges and universities are starting to take part in as well. And I think that the experience that we have developed so early on will be so beneficial to us later in life, within any realm, whether in technology or just in terms of communicating with others and advocating our ideas. And then for the second question about what spurred the idea for the conference, it was actually this presentation. So we were able to deliver this Say It With Social Media presentation at the Global Education Conference, which is another conference that Steve and Lucy directed. And so as Lillian and I were presenting there, we were the only student presenters to an audience of administrators and among other administrative presenters. And so after the conference, we were talking, and with our technology group, we started thinking about why there were no other student presenters or why there wasn't a conference that was all for students. So we decided to try to develop a network of schools to talk about the ways that they had used technology and to share our similar ideas with them. And then when we were able to meet with Steve and Lucy in person, our idea of a small network of schools turned into this global conference. So we've been so excited about how much it's grown and how we've been able to watch it grow.
Okay, so another question that I saw before was about kind of the misconception of the narcissistic teen culture, especially with selfie culture on Instagram, and whether that is true. And I think that you know, the way that we've been using social media recently in reference to our education kind of disproves that idea that you know, we're only using social media to boost our ego and do all that, that if you really look, there's so much more stuff out there that students are getting excited about in relation to their education and all that, that, you know, I have multiple posts on my Instagram and my Facebook in reference to things that I'm doing at school because I'm genuinely excited about everything related to my education, and that I'm not just posting selfies, and that there's so much more truly going on in social media than what people immediately think, and that if you take the time to really look into it and look into what people are doing, you'll see how great the connections that are being made are, and how much potential it has, and that it shouldn't be written off because it has this aura about it of teenagers just using it to post about themselves and get attention. And so I saw another one that was, how has your teachers' roles changed at all, if at all, with this new social media education? And I can speak to that. I don't know if Isabelle wants to.
Sure. So I think that the teacher's role is very similar, whether, I guess it's a question of old versus new learning. If you think of new learning as the integration of technology and education versus old learning with less technology, but I think at Marymount we do a good job of combining the two. Like I know people who completely prefer handwritten notes over taking notes on their laptops, or especially in math class, we use technology in different ways, like we use calculators or iPads to show graphs, but we don't use our computers as often. So I think that in terms of the teacher's role, it's just either way, in old or in new learning, just to inspire and continue to educate their students in whatever ways they see as the most, I guess, exciting and engaging for their students. And that's something that the integration of technology in our curriculum has really shaped and changed for me, because now the rise of so many different learning styles and so many different ways to learn allows everyone in the class to be reached out to in a different way. And I see Mr. Walsh is saying that he's expected to be available 24/7. I think that First Class, our email server where you can check what time your teachers have read your emails, is definitely shows that. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I definitely think there's just so much more of a connection with our teachers now because there are more ways to connect with them, and it really just makes the student-teacher bond stronger, and all of that. And Isabelle said all of that so well. So are there any other questions? We're open to talking about a lot of things in relation to social media in schools. Let's see.
Well, thank you so much. We're going to put up the last slide, which is our contact information, so that if you have any other questions, you can reach out to us by email. So this has been great. Thank you guys all for listening in on us, and thank you, Lillian, for presenting with me because I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you all so much for listening in. It's really such an honor to have such a big audience. And if you saw at the beginning, it really is a global audience. I think this shows another way that social media just helps everyone connect. And thank you to Isabelle, too, for joining in this presentation. I always love doing this presentation. It's a fun one to give. So,
and then one more comment I wanted to say that I just noticed on a similar point is that when Lillian and I first presented, our audience was completely different, and it was, as I had said before, completely administrator-based, but it was also much smaller. So we're so excited that so many students have tuned in. I see a lot of familiar faces from my school, but also people from around the country and around the world, and I'm really excited that we're all able to connect this way, because this is really putting to action everything that we've been talking about. So thank you so much to everyone.
Yeah, thank you all so much. So I believe at this time we are going to stop the recording.